I made a video about this game, which was a 10-minute overview of the game, and to keep to that time limit, I didn't really discuss the game very much. I sort of presented the overall aspects of how it worked, and at the end of that video, I demonstrated that I was rolling up a random quest after completing 2 of the original 5 suggested quests, which are the dungeon training quest, which is basically leveling up, and I rolled up this rescue the villagers quest. I rolled a 22, and this quest requires that you kill 5 H monsters, which are sort of humanoid variant monsters that I'll show you, in order to rescue the villagers that are being tortured by them. There is an encounter modifier of -20, and you get 350 gold pieces for success, and if you fail or want to end the quest, you have to forfeit half the gold that you have. What I've decided to do for this video is to show the beginning of basically one turn, the first turn of that quest, to demonstrate how the game actually plays a little bit, and to give myself some opportunity to talk about some of the game mechanics that I had to gloss over in that other video. So you can check out the link to that video if you want to see what I said there about the overall system. I won't go into the rules too much, but I will demonstrate how they work a little bit. I'll remind you that this -20 modifier for the encounters means that when you do your d100 roll, you will be subtracting 20 from your result. And what this does, what it serves to do, is to bring you lower on the encounter table. That will make things both, generally speaking, easier for you, but also ensuring that you are, or at least coming closer to ensuring that you are encountering monsters whose reward will be what you need to complete your quest. So, for example, for this quest, what we need to do is make sure that we kill 5 monsters with this H value here. So a goblin archer, a goblin warlock, the ratman champion. As you can see, they are the goatman priest, they are humanoids, orc archer, etc. So that will be our goal, and obviously it is a random generated encounter, so who knows how many rooms we will need to go to get to that. But I'm going to just jump in and show you how the turns work and what you actually do to play the game. I am using my character. Here's an overview of what happens in a turn. And I am using the character that I have been building up. So this is the 3rd quest that Thor Thronesucker has been going on. He has his dexterity is the value that is built up the most. And this is where I will start by talking about something in the game that I wish was slightly different, in the sense that at the beginning of a turn, you start by adjusting your equipment. Now, what this means is that you don't yet know what you're going to be encountering, at least at the outset. So it's most likely that you're going to ready the weapon that gives you, that you're using with the highest skill. So in this particular case, that would be my ranged weapons, my longbow, because that requires the dexterity skill. In the other video, I talked about the fact that when I initially rolled up the character, after choosing my values and giving myself the lowest value on strength, the random weapon that I got, I no longer have it, so I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was basically like a 2-handed battle axe, and it required strength as the value. So I was a not very strong character lugging around this 2-handed axe that was my only weapon. It made it very challenging to deal with getting through that first quest, because I had to be rolling for success a 30 or less, as opposed to, say, a 50 or less, which would be the case had I been using a ranged weapon, which I didn't have because it was a randomly generated thing. Now, you could say this is really doesn't make sense and it's a little bit frustrating, or you could say, well, it's a random game, so you're dealing with, what the cards give you, and that's the challenge. And indeed, that's how I had to approach it to make it less frustrating. However, because you are at the beginning of your turn adjusting your equipment first, before you know what you're encountering, you don't really have an opportunity to say, oh, well, I'm walking into a space with this low-level monster, maybe these little rats that are running around, so I'm not going to necessarily need or want to use my longbow with my best strength, with my best skill value, but let me take out this axe that I have to try to build up my strength and like hack away at them. And if I fail or if the combat goes many rounds, it doesn't matter if I get wounded because their wound capacity is so small. Because you can't, due to the mechanics, you're not doing this before you start the encounter, you are missing out on that opportunity. And unless I have totally missed it and been playing the game wrong, within the combat turn, there is not an opportunity either to readjust equipment. The readjusting of the equipment happens only at the beginning of the turn. So if I'm playing this wrong, somebody will tell me, no doubt, and then I'll have to just take back everything I said. So that's one thing that I found led me to just sort of continue along with using my strongest skill, because I was basically afraid to go to a weaker weapon since I didn't know what I was going to encounter. Nevertheless, at the very beginning of the quest, we've got our equipment, we're not readjusting anything, and you're spending some time on the time track, and the time track is here. There are 12 hours marked in the track, and at certain moments in the time spent, you'll possibly encounter a wandering monster or need to use oil or something like that. So we would be marking that off, and basically the very first thing we're doing is going to mapping. The way mapping works is you go to this d100 table. I should say this is a color table that I've printed out in black and white, and as such I've needed to do a little coding here to indicate what color it's supposed to be, because it does make a difference when you're mapping it out. You're rolling your d100 to see what room you get. So I rolled up at room 12 here, which is right here, and this is coded number 2, so that is a red room. That's an encounter room. So I will draw that. That's going to be my dungeon entrance, and doesn't look like it has a door or anything, so it's just a plain corridor, but it's going to have an encounter, and we will draw that up and begin the encounter. Now, though I didn't print out the grid that came with it. There's not really, in the game, there's no facing or anything like that, so I don't really necessarily want to have my dungeon map on a grid if I don't need to, so I just I'm going to be drawing it this way and not using the grid in the end. So also going to begin sort of in the middle. So I will do this and we'll see what we get. I didn't really draw this so nicely, but it's going to serve the purpose. All right, here we go. So we will be indicating this is our entrance to the dungeon, and I guess we could put some stairs in or something like this to indicate that. I'm also going to indicate that it is room 12 just in case I need to know that later on. Now, because it is a red room, it's telling us that we're going to be rolling on the encounter table, and we looked at that table briefly earlier. So this is the encounter table, and remember the encounter modifier we have is a 20, so whatever we roll, it's going to be minus 20, minus 20 to see what we're going to be finding in this room. So we got a 21, so we will be finding some giant rats. Well, I've seen these before, but it's a perfectly good example to show you how combat works. The next thing that you do is you're going to be indicating the encounter on your encounter sheet that you will be using as a log to determine the combat track, everything that you have encountered and successfully encountered, I should say, because the way it works is if they escape or you don't dispense with them, you're meant to erase this here. And as you kill monsters, there are certain rewards that you get along the way that are pre-programmed. 50 gold. I'm almost getting 300 gold, and so this is a mention of my all the things I've encountered. And you can see there's a bunch. I've seen these rats before, because with the encounter modifier for quests 1 and 2 of -20, it's pushing you back down to the bottom of this table. So you are seeing things multiple times. And I did actually experiment with in one of the quests where the modifier was a 40 or less, and I just said to myself, well, if I roll a 40 or less, I'm going to go with whatever I get. And I think that's how I ended up with this goblin archer, because it was just getting a little boring to continue to encounter these rats. But it's okay for right now. It'll be a good opportunity to show you a couple of the special modifiers that monsters can have. And actually, let's just take a look at them this way. So the rats are a C, they're a creature, so killing them is not going to help me with my quest where I have to kill these humanoid monsters, but this is what we encountered, so we're going to do it. They have an attack value, a baseline attack value of 25, which means that they will score a hit if they roll 25 or less. They have a 0 defense value. Their damage takes a -2 modifier, so it's going to be difficult for them to score damage points. They're not very big, as it were. They are a pack of them. So there's a group of rats, and they have the hit points of 3/2/2. What this means is you've encountered 3 of them, and because it is a pack, for each member of the pack who is alive, you're going to be adding 5 to the attack value. So initially, when I'm encountering 3 of them, and when they are encountering me, their attack value is actually 35, because they got 25 plus 5 plus 5. So as long as all 3 of them are alive, they will be able to score a hit on a 30 or less. They also have the disease quality, which means that if they roll a 1, I think it is, let's just be sure before I say exactly what that is. When they score a natural 1 on their damage, they will disease us, and then we have to shade a pip on our disease track, and then there are other effects of that. I do just want to take a moment and look at some of the aspects of this monster abilities chart, because this is one of the ways in which a very simple game adds in some richness by giving a real range of abilities that are thematic to the monster. So, for example, if a monster has Death Touch, it says is an attack that ignores some of the character's defense while encountering the monster. The characters have -2 defense. So, if you're encountering something with Death Touch, you are automatically at a disadvantage. There are flying monsters, and if you're fighting a flying monster, you're suffering a -10 on your strength value. But if you're using your ranged weapon, it has no effect. And again, that makes thematic sense. So, if you're trying to do some melee action against a flying monster, it would be harder to do as opposed to using ranged weapon, which would be more appropriate. There are large monsters, there are pack monsters, as we saw. There is poison, and you can have, let's see, moving here down. Tough. The monster is particularly resilient and may be made of stone or has very tough skin. When you're fighting a monster that has this, to deal each hit point of damage, you have to require 2 damage results. Sorry, that's off the video there. But that is just a brief look inside some of the ways in which the monsters have some characteristics and theme. This is particularly bad, this dark magic. So you have to roll a d10 at the start of each combat round to see what type of magic spell you're going to be encountering if you deal with somebody with dark magic, and they can be pretty bad, these spells. I got a drain life spell once in my second quest, I think it was, that each hit point the character loses, I add to the monster. So that's a tough one to deal with. So you can see that there is flavor here that makes thematic sense with the kind of monster that it is. And the loot, what we would get for successfully dispensing with them, is an opportunity to roll on table P, which is the parts table, and this will allow us to, or would allow us to, harvest basically one of their parts and sell it later on, or if we were doing the first quest, that would be one of the requirements for the first quest, because the first quest is a parts quest where you need to find 3 monster parts and turn them in at the end of the quest. But for us, for our quest, that's not part of it. However, there is a gold value for every part that you get. So we will be, when we kill the rats, or if we kill the rats, we will be collecting this part, and it will be contributing to what we can sell at the end to buy things and level up. Speaking of that, I did gloss over that, and before we get to combat, I'll talk about this. At the end of the last quest, after I did my repairs and my leveling up, I had 817 gold coins, or gold coins left, and I decided to spend them on the table, the required items table, and I showed this a little bit at the video before, but here it is. We'll look at it again. These are called essential items needed for adventuring, and they go from very cheap to the lockpick to very expensive. And I will tell you, spoiler alert, I bought this potion of lesser fate, which would allow me, when rolling on any table, to drink it and add 20 to my result. It cost me half of the gold that I had, but I think, I had a lot of gold, and to me that's a pretty good thing, because the tables, as you get up in value, there are more valuable things. There are treasure tables and item tables and armor and weapons, and this just gives me more options. So I did purchase that potion of lesser fate. I also purchased some this brew of lesser power, which is right here, and it's going to give me 1 damage for my next damage dice roll. That's not so much, just 1 extra damage, but if you get into an extended combat with something that can be an annoyance, that's a group of things or whatever, sometimes you just want to get rid of it. So I figured that would be good to have. It only cost me 35 gold. I got 3 of those. I also bought this brew of lesser dodge, which would give me a +1 defense before a monster rolls its damage dice. And the reason that I did that was, if I'm encountering something pretty big, I say my hit points are pretty low, 1 extra hit point could be significant at that moment. I do have some healing potions that I'm carrying around, but I'm carrying them in my backpack, and I will show you. This is actually from Quest 1, but you can be carrying things in your backpack. You can be carrying things in your unequipped potions and non-slot items, and I've chosen to put the potions there because you can be carrying them in your belt here, your belt slots. The reason I don't want to do that, if you have something in your belt slot, you could use it in the middle of combat. So if my hit points were going down to 1, and I had this healing potion in my belt pack, I could just drink it. However, there are situations where you can lose items that are in your belt slot, and I didn't want to risk that. So instead, I've chosen to take the healing potions and keep them unequipped, which means I can't drink them in the middle of a turn, so that's the risk, but I also can't lose them. So that's just a choice, a risk that I'm taking, because my health points, I've restored to full health points at the beginning of the quest, and I'm willing to take that risk right now. I could always change and re-equip between turns if I felt like I was getting somewhere dangerous and wanted to have that on hand. But in any case, I bought a couple more of those that I'm storing, and I also bought let's see, this brew of lesser power. I discussed that already. The healing and the dodge. So those are some of the things that I spent my money on at the end of the last quest. And now I'm going to show you how combat works. The combat, the most interesting thing about combat is right here, and I did not mention this in the other video, and honestly, talking about this was really what motivated my wanting to do this video. At the beginning of each combat round, you roll a d10, and it's called the reaction roll for the monster. What it means is that if you roll on, for example, a 10, the monster is going to escape. Now, you can try to prevent its escape, and that's a different mechanic that's detailed down below, but or you could let it escape. If you roll, for example, something like a 1 or a 2, it says that if the monster is down to less than half its hit points, it's going to gain an attack value of 5. So it's like it becomes frenzied, or it's like one last gasp, or it could gain up to 10. And then 3 to 7, it's just going to, well, it says monster will attack as normal. It really should say no reaction, because this is a reaction roll. It doesn't mean it's going to attack right now, but nothing happens. If it is, if you roll a 9 and it was damaged last roll, it will escape, and if it has less than half its hit points, it will escape. The effect of this is to add a little bit of life into what can become just a, okay, I'm rolling, it's rolling, I'm rolling, it's rolling. If you get into a situation where you are continually rolling high and therefore not scoring a hit on either side, it can get a little bit samey feeling. You know, okay, it's my turn now. Oh, no, I didn't make a hit. Oh, no, it didn't make a hit. However, each time you go through the round, you need to roll on this, and this adds some life, because you can roll after a lengthy combat and get an escape, or it will escape, and that's really frustrating, and that adds a little bit of story into it. Oh, I've been tangling with this thing and now it's running away. Or I've been tangling with this thing, let me see if I can block it from running away. And to block it, I guess you can see this down here, you are testing against your own strength, -10, to see if you're successful in blocking it. If you do, you go back into combat and you get to attack. So this is a nice, I like this aspect. So let's just see how it works. Coming into combat here, we've got the rats. We're dealing with 3 of them, and the very first thing we do is we're rolling on this combat table to see if anything happens. We rolled a 2. It doesn't have less than half its hit points, so we're just starting combat, so nothing's going to happen. The next thing that we do is we are taking our weapon here, which is going to be our longbow, and our longbow gives us a damage of +3. It's a very powerful weapon, and we have a dexterity that we're using with a 50. So at a roll of 50 or less, we will be successful. And again, this is where, as I said at the beginning of the video, I think we didn't re-equip or anything, so this is what we're holding. Had I known we were going to be just encountering some rats, maybe I would have taken, I got rid of that really heavy axe, which after the first quest, but I have something else that I can't remember what. I have a single-handed axe weapon that I could have used here. It is, well, I don't know what it is. In any case, I have some sort of handed melee weapon that I could have used to try to build up my strength value, but I didn't. So we got the longbow here, and it is our turn to roll and see if we can get anything done. And we cannot. We rolled a 79. That's over our value. Now it's the rat's turn, and remember, they've got a 35 value at the moment because there are 3 of them. So on a 35 or less, they would make a hit. They did not. So now it is not back to us. It is back to their reaction roll, and that's something to pay attention to, because you can forget to do that. You have to do that every turn. They rolled a 9, and they were not damaged, so there's not going to be an escape. This is back to our attack, and we're looking again for a 50 or lower to have an attack. That, oh, I'm going to call that a 48, which I think it was. So we have landed an attack, and I will show you now how this works. To do an attack, there's 2 aspects to the attack. You are rolling the damage dice, which is a d6, but you're also rolling the hit location dice, which is a d10. And you're looking to this chart to see the location roll and whether that gives you any damage modifiers to your hit. So what I rolled here, well, this is, I think I probably dispense with them. So my damage dice here is 5. Remember, I also have a +3 modifier, so I'm already doing 8 damage, and in fact, I think the total value of those rats was, well, you know, I never wrote it down. We'll have to go back and check. On the hit location, I rolled a 6. Now, there's no damage modifier. The location hit, well, this says main weapon, not really relevant for the rats who don't have a weapon. I have a special skill, and the special skill that I have is called Perfect Aim. And you can see this right up here, which says I can roll again for the hit location and choose either result. So what I could do, and I will do it just to sort of show you and see what we get, I think they're gone anyway, but is I can re-roll this to see if I can get a better roll that gives me a modifier more than nothing, which in fact I did. So on my re-roll, because of my perfect aim, I say, actually, I'm going to hit them in the back. So I've got a +2 on that. That's 7, and I already have the +3 modifier because I'm using, again, overkill, but I'm using this longbow here against them. So that is a total of 10 damage that I did to the rats. So this wasn't much of a combat to demonstrate to you, but I think you can see basically how it works. And we'll just look back here to remind ourselves, since I never wrote it down, what their values were. And indeed, their total hit points for all of them was a 7. So they are gone, and I have successfully killed them. So because combat happens simultaneously, the fact that the rats are dead doesn't mean they don't get one blast or simultaneous attack on us. So we will see whether they succeeded. Oh, and they did. They rolled a 12, which is under their value of 35. So they are going to get an opportunity to roll on the table for their attack. And remember, they have an attack value of a damage value of -2. So they've got to roll something pretty decent. Well, they rolled a 4. So they're going to do two little bites at us, and they're going to be biting us on the waist, which is, I don't actually think we have that protected per se. Let me just check and see. We do not. So we actually have ended up with 2 little nips at us, which will be 2 damage. Now, I'll just show you here what we could opt to do with our shield. We have this shield here, and the shield can be absorbing damage for 1 point of damage, half a pip. So we could absorb both of those damages by coloring in 1 pip, and as you can see, we have 6 pips to go before the whole thing is destroyed. But, you know, we've got our 20 health here. I'm just going to take those 2 points of damage directly and move on, because that's not so bad. So the rats put up a little bit of a fight, and they got in some bites, but we have dispatched with them. Killed them. So what I get to do is roll on the looting table, which is table P here. And again, if this were the first encounter, this would be one of my required things, but as it isn't, I'm just going to be getting something and probably, selling it later. I have to go retrieve that. So we're rolling on the parts table, and we roll a 73. What do we get? Oh, we got a head. Often shrunk and stuffed to make great ornaments for the rich. 25 gold points, that's great. Most of these things, that's probably actually one of the highest value things on here. Well, no, but it's pretty good. So we got a rat skull worth, a rat head worth 25 gold points. We will log that down, and we will certainly be selling that for its value after the quest. Now, we're not done, because we still are in our turn. So we will go back to the turn order here and show that once we have cleared the encounter here, we can do a search. And for a search, we're going to roll on table F to see if we find anything. So this, of course, is the fun part here. Now you'll notice this is the other table in the book that is keyed color-coded. There's some color codings up here, but Again, I have printed it in black and white. So we will notice that we are in a red room, so we're adding plus 10 to our roll. So because we are in a room that is meant to be an encounter room, we're going to be pushed up a little bit on this table to get potentially something better, because as the values increase, the things get better. What did we get? Well, unfortunately, we only rolled a 6. So we rolled actually a 16. You'll see here it's going to force us to spend 1 time to search through some of the large heaps of debris, and we abruptly stop as the pile is made up of diseased and rotting corpses. We shade in 2 pips of our disease track. Well, that stinks. So we have become diseased by looking through some fetid room and uncovering some corpses. So we will be marking this into our disease track and trying to find my little guy here. Actually, I guess I failed to heal my disease. So now I need to mark in 2 more disease pips here, and I need to start to be careful about this. And remember that at the end of this quest, hopefully I won't get further diseased. At the end of this quest, I will be able to buy something that can heal me up here. And once this happens, what you need to do is remind yourself that each time the track is refreshed, the character has to roll a d10, and if they score equal to or less than the number of disease pips, they suffer 1 hit point of damage. So that is how the disease mechanic works. And so I will need to continue to check to see whether I am diseased further or not, or whether that turns into any type of hit point damage ultimately. And I think that is the end of our turn. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, that's the end of our turn. So what we would be doing is we would be marking the area here searched, and we would continue on to the next turn, where we would begin by adjusting our equipment and then moving on to further mapping. So there's a look inside the actual turn of a game of D100. So in the end, we didn't have too much exciting combat going on, but I think enough to give you a sense of how it works. And you can see, as mentioned, that sometimes it can really be going back and forth a lot and can get a teeny bit tedious, but for the most part, it goes pretty quickly. And once you make your way through the early quests, where you're encountering a lot of these rats and bats and things, you get to encounter more interesting creatures and monsters and move on. Now, as I mentioned at the other video, the way the game rules are, they're wanting you to go through 5 quests initially, or the suggestion is to go through 5 quests initially before you do the random quest, because you are meant to be leveling up. And so getting the victory conditions for these early quests are going to be giving you, the parts are basically going to help you get some money that you can spend, get weapons and armor. Again, weapons and armor is what you're focusing on here. I abandoned this after 2 quests because I got quite a lot of armor incidentally in the quest for weapons, and I felt pretty confident in terms of how Thor Thronesucker is outfitted at this point. We can see, looking here, I didn't really talk about this, but a lot of his available slots are filled with some very good items that we got in just the first 2 quests. So I felt confident in doing a random roll, and when I complete this quest, I would continue on and do another random roll. And of course, successful completion of this is going to give me a lot of money to spend on a lot of good things, which would hopefully aid me in doing more and more involved quests.